One throne.
Hello, everyone. This is King of the Hill Survival Pool Show. I'm your host, Shawn Stewart, and this time this is March Madness. As today or tonight, depending on where you are watching it, this is the round. This episode is round of 64. So I am your host, Shawn, the strategist Stewart, on this Wednesday, March 18th, 2026. Now, originally the show was going to be yesterday, but I said nope, I'm going to do it today because originally I was going to go to a Oakland County baseball game, but unfortunately that game was canceled because of the cold weather. So I decided to push it to tonight. So I'm glad to have you guys on that are watching or whether you are listening on the audio feed. Now, by the way, where's my drink at? I forgot where my drink at. So before I begin, I want to say that you can follow King of the Hill on social media at on X is King of the Hills and on Instagram is King of the Hill Survivor. So that way you can find it. Now, before I begin, I want to say this as well. Now, if you're watching on the 586 Sports website, we actually added something. So instead of like you going on the website, we actually installed an app. So when you click on 586sports.com, you'll see a notification saying, "Hey, do you want to install the app?" So this app is not on Google Play or on the Apple App Store. It's on the website. All you have to do is just click on it, and then it'll download it right straight to your phone, tablet, or on your laptop. So I am confident that this will be a very great upgrade for our website as well. So I want to give you a quick update on the first four scores that happened yesterday, Tuesday. So Howard beat UMBC 86 to 83. That was the 16th seed. So Howard will play Michigan, the top seed Michigan in the Midwest bracket. Then the 11th seed, Texas beat North Carolina State 68 to 66. So Texas will play 6th seed BYU in the West region. Now for tonight, as we're recording, so we have two 16 seeds and two 11 seeds. So the first one will be 16 seed Prairie View and Lee. That game will be at 6:40 p.m. Eastern time. So whoever win that game between those two will face top seed Florida in the South. And then last but not least, the 11 seeds between Miami, Ohio and SMU. That will be a 9:15 game. So whoever wins that game will face Tennessee, 6 seed Tennessee in the Midwest Division. All right, so we got that out the way. And then we also got the 17s that have 7 injury situations. So I have a lot of stuff. So I have my notes and I also got the tips on how to play your survivor pool, whether you are an expert or want to know more or you're a beginner. So let's get on with the show as well. All right. So I have been asked this question a lot of times is what is a survivor pool? Now, a survival pool is simple. You pick one team each round to win and you advance, lose and you're out. You cannot reuse teams, so the deeper you go, the fewer teams remain, and the harder decisions become. So that is a survival pool. Now here's the tips that I'm going to give you. Now, tip one is pick popularity. Now, pick popularity tells you how many people you're surviving with or surviving past in March Madness. Popularity is even more important because the field shrinks fast. High pop picks are safe. Low pop picks are leverage. So your job is to know when safety matters and when leverage matters. So whether it's March Madness or NFL, for example. So if there's the popular pick, you want to pick the team that nobody else is picking. So, because if you pick a team that everybody else picked, there's no leverage of that. That's like a safe pick. So we don't want no safe picks. We want picks that doesn't have as much value. That's a great way to say it. Now, tip number two: Double pick rounds if your pool uses them. Now, some March Madness survival pools require 2 picks in the round of 64 or round of 32. So that means you need 2 winners to survive. These rounds eliminate players who don't plan ahead. If you burn too many strong teams early, you won't have enough firepower to survive a double pick round. So that's very important. But unfortunately for me, I'm in, matter of fact, I'm actually in one of them on ESP on USA Today because I'm on a double pick round. Now, tip number 3. It is saving teams and future value. Now, future value is everything in March Madness. Some teams are more valuable later in the bracket than they are in the earlier rounds. If you burn a Final Four caliber team in the round of 64, you're limiting your options when the bracket tightens. This is where your authority shows. Next one we have another tip is called upset risk and trap matchups. Now, March Madness is built on upsets. Some matchups look safe but carry hidden risk. Veteran mid majors, elite guards, slow tempo teams, injury protected favorites, and 5 versus 12 matchups. Survivor players who ignore upset profiles get eliminated early. Tip number 5, chaos rounds. Every tournament has a chaos round, usually the round of 64 or round of 32. Where multiple favorites fall, your job is to not to protect chaos. Your job is to survive it. Tip number 6, region path and bracket structure. Survivor is a bracket game, so you must understand each region's path. Some regions are top heavy, some are wide open, some have earlier landmines. Your pick must reflect the structure of the bracket, not just the seed numbers. Tip number 7, burn rate. Burn rate is how fast the pool uses up the top seeds. If everyone burns the same 1 seeds early, the Elite Eight becomes a minefield. So you have to understand burn rate gives you an edge in the later rounds. Tip number 8, pool size strategy. Small pools reward safety, large pool rewards leverage. Mid-sized pool require balance. Your strategy must match the size of the field you're competing against. And this is also plays a part in popularity picks, as we'll go over that as well for day 1 and day 2. Tip number 9, have multiple entries. So I preached about this before. So whether you are doing it on a survivor pool, pick'em, or like a DFS, such as like a DraftKings, FanDuel, Owner's Box, or whatever, it's very important to have more than one entries because the more entries you have, the better you are. I'm not saying you're going to guarantee having a win, but you are actually exercising your different strategy. Let's just put it that way. So the more entries you have, the better chance if you like you're stretching out your strategy on winning your pool. Then the next one we also going to go with. I want to give a shout out to Pool Genius because Pool Genius did put this out on the 17s that have injury situations. So I'm going to give you the 7 teams that have 7 injury situations. So this is very important for information to know whether you're playing on Survivor or the Pick'em. So the first one, let's go with Gonzaga. So for Brandon Huff, who averages 17.8 points per game and 5.6 rebounds per game, he is out for the first weekend. So he has been out since January 15th, and Gonzaga has been notably worse without him. So according to Coach Few, he says, quote, doesn't expect him to play this weekend. So they are a still minus 225 to make the Sweet 16, but were fading in deeper rounds. Next one, let's look at North Carolina. Caleb Wilson, the forward, averages 19.8 points per game and 9.4 rebounds per game. He is out for the tournament, and they have been worse without him, including a back-to-back losses to Duke and Clemson. But they are still a 2.5 favorite versus VCU in the first round. The third team we're looking at is Clemson. That is center Carter Welling, who averaged 10.2 points per game and 5.4 rebounds per game. He is out for the tournament. Now, he did left in the tournament with a ACL. Now, they did win 2 games without him, but lose depth rebounding and rim protection, as they are a 2.5 underdog versus Iowa in the first round. The fourth team we have is Louisville. They have Michael Brown Jr., whose averages 18.2 points per game, 3.3 rebounds per game, and 4.7 assists per game. He is out for the first weekend, as he is the second leading scorer, leading in assists, and he is notably better when the team plays. Now, he hasn't played since February 28th, and they are a 4.5 favorite against University of South Florida in the first round. Excuse me. The fifth one we're going to look at is Duke. Duke is Patrick Jagoba, who averages 10.7 points per game and 6 rebounds per game. He is out for the first round, by the way. So, yeah, he's out for the first round. And then Caleb Foster with 8.5 points per game and 3.6 rebounds per game. So both of them are down. So the lineup efficiency takes a notable dip without both. Now, good news is they are still minus 135 to make the final four, but there's some issues with some depth concern. Then let's look at UCLA. Tyler Bladeau, who averages 17.6 points per game, 5.6 rebounds per game. He will play. Now, Donovan Dent will play, as both of them are banged up. Both of them were banged up in the Big Ten tournament, so they're expected to go. So watch their minutes and mobility early, as UCLA is favored by 5.5 versus University of Central Florida in the first round. And then last but not least is Alabama. Now, Aiden Holloway got in trouble, who averages 16.8 points per game, 2.8 rebounds per game, and 3.8 assists per game, is one of their best shooters and scorers. He is removed from the team this week, as the Crimson Tide is a minus 120 to make the Sweet 16, and that is a huge loss for the Crimson Tide. So those are the 17s that have injuries, that have situations or injury, by the way. So right now we're going to do day one. We're going to do day one, and then after that we're going to do day two. So day one is Thursday, that's tomorrow, and then day two is Friday. So we're going to be doing videos like these for round of 64, round of 32, Sweet 16, and then Elite 8, and then that's it, as we're winding up with season 1 of King of the Hill. So I do have the data grid. So we're not going to do all the teams in round 1. We're just going to be doing the teams that don't have a lot of value. So I got my data grid from Pool Grid, because I just subscribed, and I got to tell you, this is very useful. This is very useful because it tells you the region, the percentage of the win, the percentage of for rounds, and then it tells you the future value, and most importantly, the popularity guess. So it's very important to know which team could more likely be popular, because it can give you a great idea like which teams to select. So if you're in a survivor pool that's like you're picking one team for each day, then that would be very helpful. But if you're doing like if you're in a survival pool where you got to pick 2 teams, you got to really buckle down. You know what I mean? And also, I want to say this: you don't want to pick the team in the same bracket in the first round or whatever round, because if you do that, then you're messing up your bracket. So what I would do is I would strategize, so that way you'd be like, okay, I can pick this team, pick that team in a certain region, and then you know you'll get it when you'll listen to this video or listen or watch it. So we have the East, Midwest, South, and West. So we're going to do a couple of games that we're paying attention. So right now, like I said, we're doing day 1. So let's look at this game between 13 seed Troy versus 4th seed Nebraska. Now, Nebraska is in the South region. So, Nebraska has not won an NCAA tournament in its history. So, Troy slipped up a few times in the Sun Belt this season, but the wins over San Diego State and Akron, plus a near miss against USC, this Trojans team has proven can hang with the higher level competition. Now, the Huskers offense can be hot or cold, which is a red flag entering the big dance. Rink Mass offensive struggles have been a major factor in the Cornhuskers' late season slippage, and he will need to get back on track for this team to make a deep run. Bryce Stanford is a terrific shooter who can get hot in a hurry, while Sam Hoiberg has developed into an all-around valuable player on both ends of the floor and shoots close to 55% from the field. Nebraska's perimeter defense is one of the best in the nation. Opponents are shooting just under 30% from three-point range, and only Iowa, with its dramatically slow pace, allows fewer points per game than Nebraska. Now, Nebraska aren't as strong from the standpoint of inferior defense, with opponents fighting more success inside, and you won't see this group block too many shots. So, Bryce Stanford averages 17.8 points per game. Rick Mass is 13.5 points per game. Hoiberg is 9.6. Jamarquis Lawrence is 9.7 points per game. And then Burke Whitewell with 6.4 points per game. So that's Nebraska. Now for Troy, they look like one of the top majors in the country early in the season when they beat San Diego State and University of Alabama, or UAB, while losing to USC on what can only be called a miracle. Now they did beat Akron in the midseason non-conference game, but they have struggled to take control of the Sun Belt Conference and only narrowly won a conference regular season title. Now they average 80.3 points per game and attempting plenty of threes per game. Now, but officially from deep hasn't consistently been there for this team. Now they shoot 33.5 from three-point range and are more efficient closer to the basket, but don't have the bodies to consistently get those opportunities. Now, they do not have a single player that's taller than 6'9". They don't block a significant number of shots, but they do rank top 50 nationally in rebounds. Now Troy do limit opponents to just 31.3% from three-point range, and the interior defense is a bit shorter, though their points per game mark is skewed by 5 different overtime games. 4 of them went to at least a second overtime. Now, they don't necessarily excel in one particular area, but this is a battle-tested team that went 3-1 in quad 1 and 2 games, and the evidence that the Trojans can hang with a team like Nebraska is real, but their full body of work doesn't lend much confidence. So the net ranking is 125th. Their Ken Palm ranking is 143rd. Now, quad 1 record is 1-0. Quad 2 is 2-1. Quad 3 is 4-7. And then their quad 4 is 13-3. Now, their offensive efficiency ranking is 141st. Now, their defense is 166th. And Nebraska is a 13.5 favorite. So, according to Full Genius, Nebraska is the popularity guess. So, if you're in a bigger pool, you do not want to select that team, because once again, like I said, if you're in a bigger pool, you want to look somewhere else, because if you're picking that team that is the highest, that what we call it a safe pick. So we don't want safe picks. We want to pick a team that will give us leverage on the long run. Now, it doesn't matter on a small pool, but like if you're like on the mid or a large, it does matter. So I would not pick Nebraska if I'm in a large pool. The next one we have is 15 seed High Point versus 2 seed Wisconsin. Now, Wisconsin, Greg Gard he got to get this one, because they had 5 consecutive first weekend exit as a 3-5 3, 9, and 5th seed, and plus that one season without a bid has made the Badgers fan base administration restless, and of course their football program. So a Sweet 16 in its first two seasons feels like an ancient history at the point. Every March that ends on the first weekend makes the next one feels more urgent. Good news is this year's team is generally capable of ending that streak. Bad part is that the profile comes with real volatility baked in. Now, their offense has outpaced the defense in each of the last two seasons, which is reversal of how Guard built his reputation in Madison, Wisconsin. Now, the Big Ten does not produce many turnover heavy defenses, and Wisconsin's strong adjusted offensively efficiently ranking has been shaped significantly by a low offense turnover rate. So, a real skill, but one that flatters the overall offense picture somewhat, as the Badgers are a top 60 team in both 2 point and 3 point percentage heading into the dance. And they do have the five of the best wins of any team in the field. Now, on the defensive side, they are pedestrian in shooting numbers allowed and pairing that one of the 50 lowest defensive turnover rates in the country. Rates creates a genetically high variance environment. Now they took 70 more threes than twos during the regular season, and they have allowed threes on over 40% of opponent attempts. So when the shots are falling, this team can beat anyone. And when they're not, the defense doesn't have the structure to compensate. Now, Nolan Winter was the most important person on that team. The 7-footer was hurt late in the regular season and had 31 of Wisconsin's 46 dunks throughout the first 31 games, which is second on the team in close two-shot attempts behind slashing guard Nick Boyd. So that is not a great defensive rebounding team, what Winter provides. And his ability is the difference between a team that has legitimate path to the Sweet 16 and one that probably doesn't. And with him being healthy and the lineup, Wisconsin's ceiling is real. Now, as for High Point, they are back in the tournament for the second straight year under Clayman, who has elevated from his associate head coaching role after Alan Huss departed for a head coaching and winning position at Creighton. Now, for those of you that don't know what Creighton is, that's in Kansas. I didn't even know about that, even though regionally it doesn't make any sense. Where was that? Oh, yeah. Clayman went shopping in the transfer portal at SEMO State, Xavier, Arizona, Cal State, Norwich, and Liberty kept holdovers Terry Anderson, Chase Johnson, and Brandon Hawson, and somehow won 30 games. That is one more than Hulse well publicized 29 win squad. The same structure not applies to both versions of this program. They have no quadrant one games, a loss in both quadrant two appearances, and one of the worst schedules of any tournament team. So there's no much High Point can do about that given their conference affiliation, but it makes evaluating them against a power conference opponent genuinely difficult. Now they do have control of the ball and create extra possessions. They are a top 10 in turnover rate on both offense and defense. They do play a quicker pace last year's team. Of the 30 regular season wins, only 5 came by 6 or fewer points. This is the type of team that dominates inferior competition rather than squeezing by. So the step back from last year's group in 2 points and 3 point percentage, offensive rebounding, and free throw shooting is worth noting. Though, and last year's Panthers already considered dangerous. They were the better team in most measures. Now, the Badgers' 5 marquee wins and Winter's interior presence should be enough to be advanced, but if the threes could go and High Points turnover forcing defense create extra possessions against a Badger defense that can't get stops, guards' first weekend misery extends 6 straight years. So we are still in the day one of the bracket. So please bear with me with all this information. So the next one we're looking at is ninth seed St. Louis. And by the way, Wisconsin is, according to Pool Genius, they have them as a 85.2 in the first round win, and they do grade that as a 89. So they have a 1 star for the future value. So future value is 1 star. And their round two win is 51.1. So next one, we're going to look at ninth seed St. Louis against eighth seed Georgia. Now, Georgia has been on a slow burn rebuild under Mike White after making a big dance for just the second time since 2011 last year. Under seeded Gonzaga team in the 8-9 game, Georgia came back with a more polished product this season as they finished with a winning record in SEC play for the first time since 2016, and the offense took a significant leap forward. Now, the Porter Hall filled with void left by Asa Newell heading into the NBA and Silas Damari Jr. transferring to UConn. The Bulldogs became more versatile and harder to guard, more shot attempts at the rim, better shooting percentages on both twos and threes, improved free throw shooting. It's a cleaner offensive operation despite losing two of their defensive players. Now, Georgia's defense has slipped noticeably as they finished 13th in 2-point defense and 14th in efficient field goals defense in the SEC. Now, the defensive rebound has been a problem all season, almost certainly a side effect of wanting to push pace and get out in transition more. Now, they only barely cracked the top 100 in adjusted efficiency. They did have late wins at Kentucky and at home against Alabama, showing that there's a ceiling raiser in this group. Now, it tells you most more about what you need to know how far this bracket expects them to go. Now, St. Louis, by the way, is the feel good story of the tournament and one that was denied its proper moment 2 years ago. Robbie Avila, the 6'10" forward who looks like he was plucked out of the '87 instructional video. He was robbed of his national coming out party with Indiana State, fell in the Midwest Mountain Valley MVC Missouri Valley Conference tournament final to Drake back in 2024, despite going 31-0 at one point. This is a program that statistically deserved a tournament bid that never got one, and the basketball world was worse off of it. Now, Villa has followed Coach John Schwartz to St. Louis, and the Billinkers are back to the tournament for the first time since 2019, with Avila posting a ridiculous 62% on twos and 42% on threes. Now, St. Louis are a top 10 team in both two-pointer and three-point defense for most of the season. They're also sitting near the top nationally in efficient field goals and three-point on the offensive end. Signature wins over VCU and Santa Clara don't jump off the page, but they're underlying profile of this team as they are both ends of the floor. They earn this pace in the bracket without much debate. So they did win 3-3 down the stretch of the regular season, but they survived George Washington in the Atlantic 10 tournament after trailing by 21 points before pulling off a comeback. Then they lost to Dayton in the semifinals. Fatigue is a real possibility for a program that's making a long geographic haul as the westmost team in the Atlantic 10, and stepping up in the competition does not make it easier. Now, the Bulldogs defense should have an easier time outside the SEC meat grinder, which could unlock even more of that offensive upside. St. Louis brings a matchup problem in a Villa that the Bulldogs' weak interior defense is ill equipped to handle. The Billikens are the better team on paper, whether they are got enough left in the tank to show it is the only real question worth asking. So Georgia has a 65% chance of winning round one. Now, if they advance to round two, they have a 22.3, and they do not have no stars. Other one we're going to look at is 11 seed Florida and 6 seed Louisville. Now, let's give credit to Pat Kelsey. He has done something that very few coaches at any level pull off. He has built winners everywhere he's been winning, like Winthrop, Charleston, and now Louisville, where he's taken Louisville to back-to-back NCAA tournament appearances, and in its dance for the fifth time in 6 seasons at 3 different programs. That is unbelievable. So last year was mostly a cameo as an underseeded Louisville squad drew Creighton as a 8th seed and exited immediately despite being a top 20 program by Bart Tovik. But this year's team is a lot better in the ways that most matter, even if the record in the ACC play took a step back from 18-2 to 11-7. So the reason it's better comes down to one thing: is shooting. Now, last year, the threes, they were at 47.8 with three pointers while converting at just 32.8, producing a mountain of empty possessions. Now, this year, Kelsey went to the transfer portal for shooters, and Louisville are now right around the top 50 in 3-point percentage while launching more than half of their field goal attempts from beyond the arc, shooting 36% instead of 32.8. With that kind of volume is a monumental difference, and it's turned Louisville into a genuinely dangerous offensive team. Now, the concern is teams that live and die by the long ball have a well-documented tendency to go cold on the road in neutral settings, and from here on out. So every game is on neutral floor. Louisville was a bottom 10 team in Harlemax away from home rating, and that tracks with a profile built on perimeter shooting. It's also worth noting that Mikael Brown Jr. missed the end of the regular season in the ACC tournament and is questionable for the NCAA tournament. So losing a key contributor right before March is never ideal for any team, but it stings more for a roster that depends on cohesion and rhythm to execute a high volume 3-point offense at a functional level. Now South Florida comes in as one of the most compelling mid-major stories in the field, and the backdrop makes it impossible to ignore. They have won the American regular season title for the second time in 3 years under Brian Hodgson. The program has never won a regular season title before 2024. Now, former head coach Amir Abdul Rahim, who built the program into a contender and was there for the first title, passed away from surgical complications before last season. So after the difficult transitional year under interim head coach Ben Fletcher, Hodgson took over and has built the Bulls into the NCAA tournament for the first time since 2012, rolling through the American tournament with wins by 22 and 15. So this team deserves at-large consideration before they even won the automatic bid. Now, South Florida is a top 50 defense in adjusted defensive efficiency, 2-point percentage allowed, and turnover percentage. They do take care of the ball, take it away, and rank in the top 10 in offensive rebounding percentage. That is a combination that creates extra possessions on both ends. The non-conference schedule includes George Washington, Oklahoma State, VCU, Colorado State, Utah State, and Alabama. So the resume has real substance behind it. So the one thing that could unravel them is three-point defense. Now, South Florida has a negative 3-point percentage differential, which is generally rare and generally problematic. And they are about to face a Louisville team that attempt more than half is shot from from the crux of the game. So Louisville's three-point barrage meets University of South Florida's most explosive defensive weakness on a neutral floor, where the Cardinals have struggled all season. So if Brown is healthy and the shots fall, Louisville will win. Now, if they go cold the way they have away from home, then South Florida's defensive rebounds, and turnover forcing ability keeps this close enough for the Bulls to pull the upset. So the 3-point differential is the number to watch. Then you also got ninth seed TCU against 8th seed Ohio State. Now TCU is back in the dance for the fourth time in 5 years under Jamie Dixon. The program has not sniffed the NCAA tournament since 1998 before he arrived. Now the Buckeyes are the more interesting team to unpack. This was a roster that looked like it was assembled nice collection of quality losses and not much else. John Mobley Jr. came back healthy. Freshman Amir Brown became a more consistent contributor, and jump shots started falling with regularly. Now the Buckeyes climb into the top 25 on Bart Tovic, a place they haven't occupied since around Thanksgiving, and suddenly they look like a team that they belong. So the offense profile is generally impressive. They are a top 20 in 2-pointers and efficiency field goal, better than 36% from threes, and the construction you actually want in the month of March. Now, Bruce Jordan running the show as the unquestioned alpha. He is as Mobley is the perfect complement, athletic wings in Devin Royal and Bynum, and Christoph Tilly as a 7-foot deterrent protecting the rim, which is a tourney-ready lineup. Now, the Buckeyes do finish in 11th in the Big Ten adjusted defensive efficiency and 12th in turnover percentage in a conference where forcing turnovers is practically a religious obligation. Now, their non conference schedule left something to be desired, and the overall body of work feels like a team that squeaked in rather than the one that earned a comfortable cushion. Now, how teams finish matters in March, and the Buckeyes were playing their best basketball with the calendar flipped to the tournament. Now, TCU's profile is harder to get excited about, as Dixon has been to the NCAA tournament 9 consecutive times without making it past the first weekend, a streak that dates back to his 2009 Pittsburgh Panthers team reaching the Elite Eight. But his credit, the Horned Frogs have been competitive. They did lose to number one Arizona in 2022 by 5 in overtime, and to number three Gonzaga by 2023 by 3 points. Now, last season's blowout at the hands of Utah State, 8-seeded Utah State, is the image that lingers and the one Dixon needs to erase. This year's team doesn't inspire confidence that he will. Now, TCU had 6 quadrant 1 wins and 3 Q1A wins in the regular season. They forced turnovers at an elite rate while doing solid work on the offensive glass. They also won 8 of their last 9 games, including wins over Iowa State and Texas Tech. Now, they aren't just there for a deep run, as they rank outside of the top 200 in 3 point percentage and outside the top 190 in 2 point percentage on offense. Now, they are outside on the other end, they're outside of the top 150 in both 2 pointers and 3 point defense. Now, for Ohio State, when you put it all together, they do have that firepower offense. Now, the Buckeyes do score against anyone in the field, and TCU's defense doesn't have the profile to slow them down. Thornton and Mobley will have their way in the backcourt until he gives Ohio State an interior presence that TCU simply can't match. Now, Dixon's first weekend curse is likely to continue, and Diebler's second year in Columbus should end on a promising note, even if a date with a heavyweight looms. So the Buckeyes, according to Pool Genius, they given them a 67 pick grade. They have a 61.7 round one percentage win. If they make it to round two, it is 22.3, no stars. So that's a team would consider in the first round. So then we have possibly an upset. 11 seed VCU against 6 seed North Carolina. Now, I did mention before the loss of Caleb Williams is the only story worth starting when it comes to North Carolina. Now, he broke his thumb on what looked like to be a dunk in practice. Now, Wilson averaged 19.8 points and 9.4 rebounds per game. He led the team by a wide margin in usage rating. He shot 72% at the rim and 61% overall on twos, and was one of the primary reasons North Carolina was one of the only 2 teams to beat Duke this season. Now, the on-off data from College Basketball Analytics is sobering. Now, the Tar Heels were plus 16.5 in net rating with Wilson on the floor and plus 7.5 without him. That dropping noticeably on both ends. Now, in conference play, the Tar Heels scored 9.3 fewer points per 40 minutes without him and turned the ball over 2.6 more often. A net rating of plus 0.7 without your best player is not a profile that inspires confidence deep into the bracket. Now, North Carolina has been living this reality for a while as Wilson missed the final 7 regular season games and the entire ACC tournament. Tar Heels went 5-3 in that stretch. Henri Vassar steps into the larger role as the 7-foot interior anchor, and Luka Bogovac and Derek Dixon will need to shoulder more of the perimeter creation. So the pre-existing concerns don't help either, even with Wilson's healthy most of the season. The Tar Heels were poor at forcing turnovers and inconsistency at the free throw line. So two details that tend to matter enormously in close March games. So the talent is still there for a run, but the margin for error without Wilson is a razor thin. Now, as for VCU, this is Phil Martelli's junior squad removed any bubble anxiety by winning the Atlantic 10 tournament for the third time in 4 years. They went 0-3 in quad one games in November against Utah State, North Carolina State, and Vanderbilt. They dropped 2 games to St. Louis in conference play, which is why they spent time on the bubble despite strong meritics and a good record. That does not matter. What matters is that this is a well-rounded team that got no obviously exploitable weakness, which is a rarity among mid-major entries. Now, VCU was a top 70 team in efficient field goal on both offense and defense, fired threes on nearly 44% of their attempts while holding opponents to just 35% from deep, and posted advantages in turnover, differential, and offensive rebounding rate. That's awesome. Now, Lazar Dolchis is a matchup nightmare as the 6'10" big shot over 200 free throws and made 35.6 of his threes. And Terrell Hill Jr., one of the better ball handlers in the field. Now, 7 players logged at least 55% of the available minutes, and all but one of them shot better than 35% from three-pointers. Now, that depth is real. The shot quality is real, and the Atlantic 10 was a legitimate conference from top to bottom. So that would be the one I would avoid as far as that. And I want to get avoid that. North Carolina has a 57.5 if they win round one, 29.3 in round two. So if you have multiple entries, I can see that. But if you have one, there's no reason to even do that. Or even if you have like a multi-entry, I would avoid that. So that was the end of round one. Now we're going to round two. Round two is Friday. All right. So let's look at 14 seed Wright Straight, who won the Horizon tournament against Detroit Mercy. I did watch that game from the beginning in against 3 seed Virginia. Now, Ryan Odom coached Virginia in the NCAA tournament, the person who orchestrated the most stunning upset in March Madness history, that 16-1 destruction of the Cavaliers with UMBC back in 2018. Now, his first year in Charlottesville has gone better than his debut season at Utah State and VCU, where his teams needed a second year to find that footing and earn a tournament bid. So this version of Virginia didn't really need that. So the Cavaliers are back at the big dance and they're legitimately dangerous. They are built on defensive, as always. That will make Tony Bennett not an approval. And even if that system looks identical, nothing like what Bennett ran for the past 16 years. Now, they are the nation's best at challenging shots at the rim and blocking attempts. Now, Odom has kept the soul of Virginia basketball while injecting new life into it. Now, we're talking about 260s now instead of the 350s. And this is a legitimate force on the offensive glass in a way Bennett's Cavaliers rarely were. So, as you're looking at it, the Cavaliers shot 39% from three and posted a top 15 adjusted offensive efficiency against a weak early schedule, then processed to shooting just 33.2% from three in ACC play. They finished 16th out of 18 teams. They were also 16th in turnover rate in conference and 10th in efficient field goal at a 37% three-point attempt rate. Now, this team lives and dies by the arc. Now, when they're on the right side of variance from deep, the defense, on the other hand, makes the team generally difficult out. Now, when the shots are not falling, the offense can stagnate in a hurry. Now, right state, correction. Now, they do have a very little fun historically in the NCAA tournament first round games. They are 0-4 in opening round appearances with losses of 43, 19, 26, and 17 points respectfully. That is a brutal stretch of the results across very different eras of the program. Now, this version is more offensive than defense. That's a flip from the 2018 team that rolled defense to March, and a different flavor than the 2022 group that leaned heavily on scoring. Now, they did improve nearly 130 spots in adjusting defensive efficiency. That is one of the back of the massive jump in turnover creation, but still finished outside the top 200 in efficient field goals. Now, they do have their ability to limit 3-point attempts. Opponents just took about 34% 3-point rate against them, and that is a natural complement to an offense that itself ranked in the 300s in 3-point rate and preferred to attack the basket. Now, Wright Straight's offensive engine runs through the paint, which Michael Mbare and Andrea Holden generate a significant share of the possessions through offense rebounds and interior touches and Ball State. Next one we have, I want to give you that. Virginia is, looking at Virginia. Virginia has a 95.7 round one wins and a 56.3. So they have 2 stars. So in that situation, if like I said, if you're in a pool that you're picking one team, more likely you're gonna save that team. So I would definitely say that team, especially with 95.7. So we're almost there. So please bear with me because this is a lot of a lot of notes. Next one we have is 13 seed California Baptist Lancers against Kansas. Now, the freshman Darian Peterson played under 45% of the available minutes during the regular season and somehow kept the Jayhawks not only functional but dangerous. Let's give credit to Flory Bajula, Trey White, and Melvin Consul Jr. for holding things together on the floor because Kansas actually posted better net, offensive, and defensive ratings without Peterson on the court during the regular season. Now, that's a remarkable thing to type about a player who shot nearly 39% from three. Now, Kansas is going to have to need him on offense because the Jayhawks rank outside the top 150 in 2-point percentage and were just barely inside the top 100 from threes without doing anything particularly special on the glass. Now, they did held opponents to extremely low percentages of both twos and threes, while Badula and Bryson Tiller anchoring the interior in a collection of long, athletic guards, making life difficult on the perimeter. Now, the results of quad one opponents were pedestrian enough to give people pause. Now, the defensive ceiling on this team is real. They do have a locked in Pearson, changes the offensive equation entirely. Now, Cal Baptist is a program savoring a moment that almost didn't happen. Now, Utah Valley had a chance to tie at the buzzer in the WAC tournament final, and they could not convert. They send the Lancers to the big dance instead of overtime. Now, Cal Baptist enter as a top 10 team in 3-point percentage allowed and a top 40 team in 2-point percentage allowed, with a top 20 efficient field goal against. Then the offense field goal ranks in the 300s to fight, having one of the best offensive rebounding percentages in the nation and a top 15 shot share on close twos. Now they got to the rim constantly and still finished 356 in the field goal percentage on those attempts. Now they ranked in the 320s in 3-point rate. Missing that many bunnies became a real problem. Now they were just 8-8 against quadrant 3 or better opponents. Now Dominique Daniels carries the team with a usage in the top 40 nationally. Next one we have is Akron and Texas Tech. Now, JT Tomlin toward ACL didn't just cost Texas Tech a player. Now, he was a double-double machine, averaging 21.8 points and 10.8 rebounds. Both figures sitting in the top 10 nationally, doesn't get replaced with a depth chart. Luke Bamboy chopped in some scoring, and Josiah Mosley saw more run. Now, the real effect of losing Tomlin was that the offense burden collapsed onto Christian Anderson and Donovan Atwell, two of the better volume three-point shooters in the country. Now, Texas Tech three-point rate jumped from 47.9 to 53.6 over the final 5 regular season games without him. Now, what's interesting is that McClassic didn't respond to losing a big by playing smaller and faster. He did the opposite, slowed the game down even further, likely trying to limit possessions and reduce variance without his best all-around player available. So that approach has underwritten all over at a higher rate than ever. Now, the second chance opportunities are drying up fast when you look at the three-pointers at a higher rate than ever. Now, the biggest threat on the offensive glass is sitting in street close. Now, Texas Tech allowed at least 1.131 points per possession in 4 of the 5 games without Toplin. That isn't a trend that you want carrying into March. McClaws used the conference tournament mostly as a maintenance exercise. So after Anderson gave everyone a scare with a minor injury, it's genuinely hard to read where this team is at right now. Now, Akron of MAC arrives with a legitimate momentum and a style of play built for upsets. Now, John Gross took the Zips to the big dance 3 straight seasons, but this is the best group he's brought with him. Okay, because they did beat Toledo 79-76, and a nail bitter was actually one of just 3 times all season. That Akron won by 6 or fewer points in 29 victories. Now, for Akron, their top 10 defense in efficient field goals, top 15 in both 2-pointers and 3-pointers, and a roster where every player logging at least 20% of available minutes posted a well above average offensive rating and shot at least 52% on twos. Now, 5 different players shot 37.6 or better from 3-pointers. Okay, I do have enough time on my phone. Oh yeah. Players shot 37.6 or better from threes, which means Texas Tech already shorthanded defense can't afford to sack or help. So those are the shooters everywhere. Now, their biggest vulnerability is defending the arc themselves. They rank outside the top 250 nationally, and their lack of size could be exposed against a more physically imposing opponent. 18-point loss to Purdue in November is the proof of that. Now, Texas Tech without Tomlin is at Purdue. The Red Raiders are going to be shooting them threes, playing deliberately, and hoping Anderson and Atwell get it together. Next one we have is University of Central Florida against UCLA. Now, let's look at UCLA. So, the Bruins did lose both games of a road trip twice and dropped 6 conference road games overall, plus neutral site losses to Arizona, Cal, and Gonzaga. Now, they are 2 for 2 in making the NCAA tournament as a Big Ten member. And, hey, there's a reason for it. They had the second lowest turnover rate in Big Ten play and the best 3-point percentage differential in the conference. They shot 37.7 while holding opponents to 31.6. Now, the problem with UCLA is they go beyond the travel schedule. So this is not the same suffocating defensive team that Mark Sharon has built his reputation on. Now, the opponents shot north of 53% on 2-point attempts, and UCLA's low 3-point rate around 35% meant the defense was regularly exposed on the interior. Now, the rebound was subpar, okay? And only Stephen James II and Xavier Booker post strong offensive rebounding numbers and need a log heavy minutes. Donovan Dent taking bad shots undermine what Tyler Bordeaux, Tyler Perry, and Sky Clark were doing from 3. And while Dent was a genuine facilitator with nearly 8 assists per game, he shot under 46% on over 300 2-point attempts, is a significant drag on the offense. The 12-0 record in quad 3 and 4, that's great until you see the offense. So, yeah, see the 9-10 mark in quad 2 or higher. Every game is quad 1 or 2 by definition. Now, Central Florida, let's look at Central Florida. They are in the field for just the second time in the Johnny Dawkins era, and they got here in a way mid-tier Big 12 teams by stockpiling enough quality teams win over by a brutal schedule. They won at Texas A&M to open the season, and the win over Kansas to kick off conference play had the Knights at 12-1, largely in control of their tournament destiny. They beat Texas Tech and BYU on the roll down to the stretch was enough to seal it. None of it screams dangerous tournament team, but none of it screams easy out either. Now they're shooting 36.3 from threes in conference play. That is real, but they don't lean into that because their 3-point rank ranks 280s, meaning they're taking a lot of mid-range 2-pointers and relying on offensive rebounds or second chance opportunities after inevitable misses. Now Central Florida ranked 10th in 2-point offense and 15th out of 16 Big 12 teams in 2-point defenses. That shot selection creates a compounding problem. They finish around the national average in 3-point defense and in 240s in 2-point defense allowed. So the defense profile isn't going to bail them out if the offense stalls. So 11-11 record in quad 1 and 2 tells you most what you need to know about Central Florida. Almost there. And last but not least is 10th seed Santa Clara and 7th seed Kentucky. Now, Kentucky was the only team to win at Arkansas during the regular season. That is one of the most impressive road wins in the SC all year. Now, they did have a absolute loaded schedule. Quad 1 and Quadrant 1A games stacked on top of each other. They did not win enough of those challenges to generate much tournament confidence. Now, they are a top 40 team in both adjusted offense and defense efficiency. The surface level read is that Kentucky is a solid turnover team. They have finished 12th in turnover rate on both offense and defense in the SEC, 11th in 2-point offensively, and 13th at the free throw line. Now, for Mark Pope, that is legitimately better defensive team than last year's Sweet 16 squad, which ranked 295th nationally in 2-point defense. This version finished 4th in the SEC in 2-point defense, and their 34.5 mark from three actually pronounced a positive differential. So the challenging shot in the SEC is about as hard as it gets in college basketball. The Wildcats did handle it reasonably well. Now, Santa Clara, by the way, they are the WCC being a 3-bid league for the first time since 2022 opened the door, but the Broncos kicked it in rather than tiptoeing through. Of the 26 regular season and conference tournament wins, only 3 came by 6 or fewer points. That's impressive. Now, they are 0-3 against Gonzaga is what it is, and they lost 2 of those by double digits. Does raise some eyebrows. Now, they did win 2-1 against St. Mary's and may have beaten them when it mattered most of the WCC tournament. Now, Santa Clara, by the way, enters as a borderline top 15 team in adjusted offensive efficiency, powered by a 20.1 turnover rate that helped crack the top 80 in adjusted defensive efficiency, a top 20 offensive rebounding percentage, and the ability to make shots at a high rate. Top 50 in 2-point all season and above in the national average from 3. Now, the efficient field goal defense is ranked outside the top 200, which is obvious concern when stepping up in class, and there's no traditional point guard running the show. So when you have a leader like Saj Goloff average just 2.6 assists per game, so this is a team that wins through collective shot making and second chance opportunities rather than playing hierarchy. So Kentucky's defense identity creates a real problem. They are built to contest shots and protect the paint. So that's going to attack what Santa Clara does best. So if they can't convert, I'm talking about Santa Clara. So if they can't convert at the rim at the rate they're accustomed to, and the 3 ball gets cold, their offensive rebound won't be enough to beat Kentucky. So there you go. All right. So here are my picks. So I'm going to start with day 1 and day 2. So my pick for day 1 in the round of 64 will be, I'm looking at the schedule. I'm going to pick Ohio State. I'm going to pick Ohio State since they have a 61.7%, because I want to go deeper in the tournament. So I got Ohio State for day 1. And then for day 2, let's go with, I'm going to go with Kentucky. So for Thursday, I have Ohio State. And for Friday, I got Kentucky. So, wow, that's the longest I ever done for a Survivor Pool show. So, like I said, please bear with me. So, I'm done. So, like I said, you can follow me on social media at 586 Sports S. That is 586 Sports with 2 S's, okay? And you can ask me questions on what type of team you're going to select in your survival pool. So, remember this: always select team that doesn't have a lot of value, because if you pick a team that has a lot of value, you already messed up your bracket. And please do not pick teams in the same bracket in the same round. Don't do that, because you will also entirely messed it up. So thank you very much for those that are watched this show. Yeah, this is my longest. So you guys have a nice, enjoyable round of 64, and I'll let you know when I'll do the round of 32, and of course we'll do the recap. All right. So take care.
One pick. One throne.